looping in the tools that we need, how we need to take care of the why, okay, before we begin to expect our children to act differently. So because the environment does not give opportunity to let off steam, and steam still has to be let off, okay? Where does it go? Phones. Very easily accessible, right here at the tips of our fingers. And the sad thing is that these things are wired. They are designed to keep us hooked. They are designed to keep you hooked. Today when you search about maandamano, tomorrow when you go, you don't even need to type about. There'll be news about maandamano in your face. That's how they've been designed to keep us hooked. And it's the same for our children, okay? They just search one thing. Tomorrow when they go back, that information comes at them. Now they are on social media. Whatever they click, next time, it just comes. I mean, you know, even for you, the things you are involved in, they're the ones that come into your face. It's almost spooky, okay? It's unbelievable that they know you that well, okay? They know our children even more. So you can imagine how hard it is for us to stay away. When you see your child forever glued on the screen like this, they're not even looking up. There's so much going on brain-wise. I just want you to understand that. There's so much that is going on to hook them brain-wise. It's not about being rude and being antisocial anymore. By the time they're there, it's not about that. And I usually just have a whole session to help unpack what's going on in the brain, to where when you take that gadget away, and I'm sure we have experienced, they become vicious. They react, they are angry. Some of them can even break things. And all you're doing is looking and saying, mtoto ni kichwa ngumu sana. It has nothing to do with that. It has everything to do with the fight, flight, and freeze stress response here. And when you take away that gadget in an environment that is with kelele and all that, for them they're just seeing a lion here. And so everything in them, the brain, that's what it has seen. And so the brain comes and says, let's fight this lion. And that's why our kids can become something else. When we take that gadget, kwanza with a lot of fujo. So that's another discussion. We can unpack it very slowly, okay? Because we need to understand the system that has been built to hook our children. And we need to find a way to fight that system and to create a system that counteracts that, okay? And not trying to fix our children. That when you take away that gadget, with hasira even you, because you had it, you're just adding fuel to the fire, okay? And they fight you back, and you will wonder, what is this child? And you know, and that is not how to handle it. It's about stepping back and asking ourselves, how do we create a system that counters that system? Because children respond to systems. Children respond to intentionality. They do. It's not that what you say is ushamba and less than what they know, because that's what we believe sometimes. Just like you don't know, you're just mshamba here and all that. But let me tell you, it's a system. And when our children feel connected to us, they will respond to anything. I've been doing this conscious parenting for many years now. Like, my son is 14 now. He was 4 when I just began to become very deliberate. And sometimes I will get him to do something and I'm like, how did I get away with that? Like, because for me, I'm just like, this guy is going to push back. But I'm just, because the system is in place, the intentionality, the conscious parenting. It does that mean that he doesn't push back in other spaces? He still does. But we're looking at becoming. We're not looking at final product. We're looking at becoming. We're looking at creating an environment, creating a system, and you cannot do that alone. So, still talking about our children, I don't even want to look at the time, but we will just go. What else is different? Our children, especially the ones who are already on social media, get a false sense of connectedness. Remember I said we are wired for connection? Okay? But they do get a sense of connectedness on social media with all those likes and all those followers. Okay? And then now their life becomes is centered around performing for those likes and for those followers. How many of us who are on Facebook have posted something on Facebook and you kind of just want to keep going back to see how many likes are there? I know none of us are like that. No, it's for other people out there. But again, I don't know if you've watched The Social Experiment. It's on Netflix. It really helps unpack how they hook you in that way, okay? They make sure whatever you're posted is seen by certain people at first. So you get very many wins, and then you keep going back, and then it slows down. Then you're like, what do I need to do again? I need to post again. And then, we are hooked like that. That's why we do need that session of just helping us understand what this system, there's a system out there. I don't know if who has watched The Matrix. It really unpacks that, okay? There's just a system that has been built, and we're just blindly following the system, and it's time you and I need to rise up, okay? We need to rise up and think about what it is we need to do different. They are connected to social media, not in the same way they are connected to peers, family, nature, and God. And we need to change that around, okay? Because they're connected from peers. Remember, we were more connected to peers growing up. We were more connected to family. It may not have been perfect, but there was connection. Nature, and it's not because we even loved being outside. It's just because naturally, that was the environment in our space. And that really contributed to our mental health. One of the reasons we have high issues of mental health is because people are not connecting with nature. People are not sleeping enough. Like if we went back to the basics, the things that help us thrive are here. They're not complicated, and we need to get back to them. Our children get the sense that life should be hassle-free, okay? Again, because of the quick microwave mentality. They just don't want problems. They cry, they complain, they whine, because you've told them to put on a shirt. Then they just want to sit and let it be done. I'm sure you have visualized one or two children that belong to you that do that in the middle of sleep. Any life should be hassle-free. So when it's not, they get frustrated. They get frustrated very easily, okay? And it's not because they are entitled. It's because the environment that we are in now actually requires you to have a nanny, okay? You remember those days where having a nanny was a luxury. So we've carried that mentality here, but yet because we need them, we put them, but we're always feeling guilty that we are messing up, we are spoiling our children. Just step back and say, yeah, this environment needs my children to have a nanny. Some even have two, okay? So whatever works for you. But the reality is that we need to find ways of cultivating responsibility, even when those nannies are there, okay? And there are many ways we can do that without sending the nanny away over the holidays so that they can be the ones working. That's a method that used to work, but it's not going to work in this, okay? And if it's working for you, that's fine. I'm not saying don't do it. But what am I saying? Contextually, there's so many other ways we can cultivate responsibility from the inside out without waiting until the holidays, okay? And we can do it on an everyday basis. A lot of those things we talk about in our parenting classes. They're more self-aware. Okay, let's go to this one first. We are raising them in a place of democracy with a lot of suggestion boxes. Hey, the other day I went to a school and they were having elections. And it's a school of, not junior, you know, the one of year 1 to 6. They were having elections. And there were those who were campaigning and they had posters. So I went in the day that there was actually elections and they had tents and they were queuing to elect their leaders, and they were, it really looked like IEBC, a small version of IEBC. And that's the environment we're raising our children in, okay? We just have to accept that and not expect them to be a certain way out there. And then when they're in our houses, to toe the line in a way that they can't speak up, or even they speak, we don't let it happen too long. We just need wisdom in how to manage that space and find what people sometimes say balance. I don't know if there's something called balance, but you can be able to do both. Our children are more self-aware. Is that true? They will talk about their feelings. They'll talk about why they're happy, why they're sad. They'll really talk about it. But then they feel entitled to happiness, okay? So, on the one hand, we are wired for negativity. We're experiencing a lot of negativity. And they feel that they should be happier. Why? Because of all these people they are seeing who seemingly are happy. Again, when they see them on social media, okay? So there's always that feeling of there is a gap. Life is better out there. I have a friend whose daughter just has idealized her life. And it's not the one she's living every day. Her life is in Hollywood, and she talks about it every day, and what she will do, and how she will show up, and what she will have. It's crazy just watching that, okay? So you can imagine what's happening emotionally and mentally and psychologically in that child's life. So anyway, we are working with the parent now. So they feel entitled to happiness, but when they don't get it, they get frustrated. And this one, pressure to excel. When you talk to children, now when I just have one-on-one sitting with them, and I'm like, when they talk, and I'm like, do you feel misunderstood? Especially teenagers, they just break down because that's the one emotion that they carry. I just feel misunderstood. So do you see why they would be misunderstood? Because they're living in a world we've never been in, okay? We can only do what we know with the tools that we have. So they're not being misunderstood because you're bad parents. They're being misunderstood because we're just living in different worlds. And I always tell parents, between you and your child, there's only one adult. And there's only one person who has to make the effort to understand the other person. And as you do that, again I say, when children feel connected to us, they respond to us. And we can get away with asking them some things that we did not imagine they would say yes to. And that's what we want to get to, a place where we are creating that environment. So there's that pressure to excel, there's that pressure to do well, there's that pressure to perform, and they feel misunderstood. There's a study done in 2006, statistics before the pandemic, that says adolescent suicide rates up by 70%. And this is just one of the many research and data that is out there about the rise of issues to do with mental health. Okay, so let's breathe in. Because I've given you a lot of quote unquote, how are you feeling? Data that can be overwhelming, right? Just take a moment to breathe in and out and just know that with all this, there's wisdom, there's hope, okay? There's tools for our generation. Did you hear what I said? For our generation. Not for how we grew up, And yes, there's a lot of wisdom to glean from our parents and all that. But that's not where it stopped. Even Jesus said, you cannot put old wine into new wineskin. Nothing in life is to be feared, only understood. And now is the time to understand so that we may fear less. And with less fear, there's more understanding, there's more knowledge. And knowledge is power. Knowledge liberates. Knowledge gives us options. Okay? So it's okay to sit here and get knowledge. Okay? If someone else is not here, it's not necessarily because they are better parents or they've got it together. They have their own reason. But let's not measure it in terms of it's because I am suffering more and they're better parents. Okay? So one of the things, and I'll just be pulling in a few of the other things, we have a free webinar, and I will share the link with you so that we have a free webinar on Wednesday at 7:30. I don't know if you have other things going on, but if you don't, please join us for this webinar. Akinyi Ochieng is a family sex educator, very grounded in how she does her work, and we're going to just be talking about parenting in a hypersexualized world. What does that mean? What does that look like? So this is, I do a lot. We do a lot of webinars, do a lot of sessions, some free, some paid, just so that this kind of information I'm giving, we can get it out as much as possible, okay? So we've described this child. When we described what they are going through, and so what does this child, what does this teenager, what does this young adult, because even the young adults, once I teach at the university, are also Generation Z, and they have been born in this space of technology, fourth revolution. What do they really need? They need many things, but I will just talk about, they need tools to build their resilience from inside out, okay? And so I'd like to talk about this. There's a lot of research that has been done on resilience, but I like to talk about this one. There's a psychologist called Amy Werner. She did a 40-year study, and what she wanted to do, 40-year, most of these studies are done over a long period of time for us to be sure that actually these are the things that lead to this, okay? So many times when you say, this one worked for me, well, let's really get the data. It really makes a difference, okay? So, thank you very much. They wanted to find out the impact of stressful life events on these children, and they followed them over a 40-year period. It was somewhere off the island of Hawaii, okay? And they followed these children, just a whole team, finding out how they were growing up. And they pulled out 3 main stressful events that were happening in those children's lives. 1, family discord. 2, family mental illness. And 3, history of substance abuse in the family. So these were quite toxic environments that these children were growing up in. Okay? Obviously, 2 out of 3 of these children ended up, it's granted, they'll end up with behavior issues, they'll end up with substance abuse themselves, they'll end up with mental health problems. It just goes without saying, because of the environment that they grew in. But there was a third. Let me use this. Turn to your neighbor and say, there was a third. I've never used that before. 1 out of 3 ended up being, and that's where the hope is. They ended up, and remember, these were extremely toxic situations. I have to remind you that. They ended up being competent adults, caring adults, confident adults. I think these are 3 qualities that we desire for our children, right? We do. Like, they just sound yummy. Like, I just want my child to be competent, caring, and confident. All right? They did. So they wanted to find out, what characteristics did this 1 out of 3 have? And guess what they found out? Two major things. Number one, strong bonds with at least one supportive, stable adult in their lives. Number two, a set of learned skills. And I'm sure these skills were not learned in a class. They were learned in life. Just like you and I learned to run home, cook, wash, do this, do homework, okay, because of the environment. That environment is not with our children now. So we have to create spaces for those skills to be learned. But that's number two. Number one that I really, really like to focus on is the stable adult, okay? And it's not just Amy Warner's research. Scores of other research show actually it's one adult. If you decide as that one person, and I'm not trying to divide families here, if you decide, Mimi, I commit to be that one stable adult in my child's life, if you just make that commitment as an individual, your child will benefit from it. And sometimes it's hard to bring the people around you on board with you. Just remember, you can still commit to be that one adult. It's going to be harder, obvious, but you can commit to be that one stable adult, okay? So in our sessions, we call them champions, Tawi champions. That person who is the advocate for the child, that who will push them, who will create boundaries, but who will provide an environment for them to be just themselves, to express their emotions, okay? Just provide that space, okay? So, because of the social media and all these searches that we do in terms of looking for the right parenting methods, we always imagine that we have to create perfect conditions for our children. This study showed that creating the perfect conditions is not the answer, okay? And so more and more research that's coming up is showing that it's really about intentionality. That's our topic today, okay? It's about intentionality. It's about ordinary, everyday interaction. Let's simplify these things. The same way God just spoke things into existence, okay? He didn't go into a lab, all right? There's a beautiful simplicity about God that we need to get back to, all right? Conversations that sometimes they will not work, but we keep doing them. We keep having those conversations. Activities together, okay? Community. I call these things low-lying fruits. So that is what we need. Things that are within our environment. And we've talked about some of them. We've talked about going out into nature, even if it is twice a month, it's still something. Sleep, okay? Just having a schedule where our children can get enough sleep. Because they're also not sleeping well because their brains are so revved up because of all this negativity that is coming at them. And you know, the negativity I've talked about here is even just a small portion. Because what are they doing? They're playing games. They're playing violent games. So that's another layer of negativity. They're engaging in activities and games that sometimes they keep losing. Negativity, okay? They're being bullied online, and they're not even telling us. They're being bullied online. They're being called names. That's another layer of negativity. Okay, let me not go back to the negativity space. We had already moved from there to a place of hope. So it starts with you. And I had asked you to write who you're becoming. So to add on to that, please write, I am becoming that one stable adult. It's possible. I am becoming that one stable adult. And for us, I told you I'll be talking about our programs as we go. One of the things we have done, like I said, now we have programs for parents and children together. We have camps for kids. And sometimes it's a 1-day camp, sometimes a 3-day camps. We're also going into schools. We're also working with churches to see how we can have a kind of long-term relationship so that we provide those 2 ingredients in a way that is more structured. So what we are teaching, we are normalizing. We're combining those 2 ingredients. We're normalizing conversations around mental health because we are so afraid to talk about mental health. And many calls I get from parents these days is, my child says they want to see a therapist. Where do I start? Why? Because they've been reading. They are connecting with the signs of depression uko nje. Then they are told that you need to see a therapist. So before they get all taken over by that information, we're having those conversations with them in the camps and helping them begin to pick what is severe, what is not, talking about sadness. That sadness, imagine, is something that is so normal. Anger and frustrations, these are normal things. And this is how they are generated in the brain. So we also talk about fight, flight. We talk about the frontal, the different parts of the brain, but in a very simplified and fun way. We are giving children and parents a toolkit with simple practical strategies. So we have a camp coming up. It's a 1-day camp on May 6th. And I'll also just share more information about it. That's a 1-day camp, but we have ongoing camps in different spaces. So, first tool is conscious understanding of children of nowadays. It's taken very long. My imeenda off. How much time do I have? Please tell me. I'm okay. All right, good. Okay, are we feeling like we need to stand up and stretch? Ama tuendelee? People can ask questions. Good. We need an energizer, an icebreaker, ama we are not? We're good. Good. So let's talk about conscious self-awareness. Part of being that one stable adult requires you to be self-aware. Self-awareness is a buzzword these days, okay? But as I always say, just buzzwords, cliches, all these platitudes, they come from somewhere. They were not just generated, okay? So let's take what we need from them and discard what we don't need, okay? So when I talk about self-awareness, I cannot talk about self-awareness without giving this quote, okay? And this quote is from a parenting psychologist, a parenting coach and psychologist. Her name is Dr. Shifali. She talks a lot about conscious parenting. And she says, unless you are fulfilled, you will use your children to complete you. You will teach them how to live with your unacknowledged fears, how to live with your rejected emptiness, how to live with your forgotten lies. The tragedy is not just that part. It's the last sentence. While unaware, you are doing so. And this is one of the quotes that have really formed the foundation for the work I do, because I have parented from a place of lack of self-awareness for a very long time, okay? And I know now I can experience the difference between parenting from a place of lack of self-awareness and parenting from a place of self-awareness. And there's no science to self-awareness, okay? We have tools available to us. So it helps to just begin to guide you into that space of self-awareness, okay? To just breathe in and breathe out. And I just have a few questions to ask you. It's just a few. There's so much we can do in this place, but how do you handle challenging situations? Not just in your parenting. How do you handle challenging situations? How do you handle confrontations? Okay? What skills do you have for that space? Because if you don't have skills in other spaces, you will struggle. You'll struggle when your child brings up, who fights you back or pushes back. You'll struggle when there's a power struggle, okay? But when you develop in those skills, you're able to also manage them with your children. Are you a reactive parent or are you a responsive parent? Do you tend to react or respond? Or you don't even know the difference? Reacting is just going off, the 2-hour lecture, the unplanned for consequences all the time, okay? The yelling, the constant yelling and shouting, the pushing your child beyond. But a responsive parent is able to breathe in and out, step back, figure out what the needs of the goldfish are. Again, it's a becoming. It's not a switch of a button. But we can journey towards big parents. Am I able to sit with feelings, with negative feelings, even the emotions that you could be having now, feelings of overwhelm? Are you able to sit with them, or do you tend to numb negative feelings with work, with being busy, with mothering or fathering, with fixing others, substance use, social media? Because negative emotions make us uncomfortable, we tend to quickly move to something else to numb them. And the skill here is to learn to sit with negative emotions. And one powerful way is to just do the breathing exercise. Being able to name those emotions. David was really good at that. He said, my soul is downcast. Why is my soul downcast? Elijah. What is Elijah? Elijah. The one who just sat and said, I wish I could die. Okay? Jesus himself did that. He said, my God, why have you forsaken me? Like, of all things, why would Emmanuel, God with us, say that to the Father? Like, how? But that's how he was feeling in that moment. He went back. He's like, if it's your will, take this cup away from me. Not once, not twice, 3 times. God the Father would have, if it was you, like you have a deal with this guy. Before you even sent him, he knew this was what was going to do. So as a parent would be like, nasi tumeongea hii kitu, tulikubaliana ni nini unasumbua, you know? But he was fully man. Okay, and that's how he was feeling in that moment. So how do we handle emotions? Are we able to sit and just the simple exercise of breathing in and saying, this is how I'm feeling, and I'm releasing it to you, God. Because you say that your yoke is easy and your burden is light. And I'm releasing these feelings of perplexity and anger towards this teenage child, and sadness and fear and anxiety, and I'm releasing them to you. And in that place, what am I receiving? So make that a practice. What do you want to receive in that place? Can we just say a little bit of that? What are some of the things you would want to receive in those moments of perplexity? Peace, encouragement, hope, wisdom. In the moment of actually having a power struggle, and this child is telling you off and on, just sit in that moment and breathe and say, God, I have no idea what to do in this moment. Please give me wisdom. I receive wisdom. And sometimes that wisdom will require you to walk away. That's not easy. Okay? That's not easy. Walking away is like giving them permission to treat you the way. Okay? But you have a long life with them. You do. Again, we have that mindset of, I have a small window of opportunity, so I have to cram all these lessons. I do not believe in the small window of opportunity narrative, and this is very disruptive for many of us, because that is how we are parenting. We're parenting knowing, Tena, we always say, you have these children for a very short time. I mean, if God wanted you to stop influencing them at a certain age, he wouldn't design it that the frontal lobe is fully functional after 25. So this time I will do what I need to do. I will become the stable adult. I may not see the results, but I know by the time they connect with the frontal lobe, all these other lessons will just fall into place. Okay? So releasing the immediate results is one powerful thing that we need to soak ourselves in. Am I able to recognize and name my emotions? Very important, okay? Neuroscientists are telling us the power of naming our emotion. What does that does physiologically? It just naturally calms you down, okay? Because it reminds the brain, this is not a lion. This is a 13-year-old also struggling. But your fight or fight response is telling you this is a lion, we need to attack, okay? But the moment you just say, this is anxiety I'm feeling right now, it's anger, okay? It calms the brain. So I think being in this field has helped me just see how amazing God the Creator is in how He has designed us and the knowledge that He has available to us to help us be better and have better relationships with people. And I ask God every day to give me the wisdom to be able to simplify it. So that, because this is information we all need. It's not a preserve of intellectuals out there. Are you comfortable with strong feelings of anger, frustration, fear? Are you? Or we have been told those are for the devil. Those are bad feelings. Those are feelings we don't talk about here. God created us with emotions. Emotions are generated in the brain, okay? It is what we do with them. What is the first thought that comes to mind when you wake up in the morning? It's just part of your self-reflection, okay? It could be different every day. It depends on what's going on in your life. What do you really believe about yourself? Like if really push comes to shove, toa tu scripture kando kidogo, what do you really believe about yourself? Okay? Because that has a lot to do with your upbringing and some fundamental things that need healing as well. Okay? What do you believe about your parenting? How do you speak to yourself, especially when you fail, especially when you make mistakes? How do you speak to yourself? Because the way you speak to yourself is the way you'll speak to your children when they fail. It's very hard for you to separate that. Whose voice do you hear when you have perceived you have failed? If you start going down that direction, you will say, it's teacher so-and-so. Could be your dad, could be your mom, could be an uncle. And you need to separate that voice from the voice of truth. I love this song. I don't know if you know. It says, the voice of truth tells me a different story. The voice of truth tells me, do not be afraid. And if you just go back and unpack those words. And the lyrics of that song are so, so powerful. Because it's the voice of the giant that tells you nothing has ever been done. This, you can't. Goliath, you can't. But the voice of truth tells you a different story. Let's allow the voice of truth to speak to us during those intense moments with our children. So back to this, it's just to remind us. And if we can to unpack a little bit about unacknowledged fears, we teach our children to live with our unacknowledged fears. What fears do you have about your parenting? It's okay to write those fears down, okay? Because until we acknowledge them, we cannot rule over them. We cannot overcome them. Acknowledge, process, release, and receive? What do you want to receive in return? When it comes to your fears, there are things you do not have control over. And I usually say in the moment, and we'll get to that serenity prayer in a bit, but we need to separate the things we do not have control over from the things we have control over, and having the wisdom to know the difference. So when it comes to dealing with our fears, I love to use this prayer, and we work with parents. When we're working with parents, I'm like, let's just go into this space. The serenity prayer that says, God, grant me the serenity, the peace to accept the things I cannot change. In this moment, the things we cannot change. I have parents who work outside the country, and their children are here. That is something they cannot change in the moment. So for me, I add that in the moment. I cannot change how my partner is reacting or is treating these children. I cannot change how my in-laws view my parenting style. I cannot change in this moment. I better have peace in that space. So receive peace. Take a moment to receive peace. And I want you to just think about 2 things, or even 1, that you cannot change, and just say a very silent prayer in 1 second. God, grant me the serenity or the peace to accept this thing I cannot change now. Okay? Grant me the courage to change the things I can. There are things we need to change. There are some boundaries we need to put with our children. Okay? There is some toughness we need to come into in the behaviors that they are exhibiting. There are some schedules that we have to throw away and come up with new schedules together. There's a way we have to come in strongly with consequences so that they can learn the pain of doing the wrong thing, okay, the pain of misbehavior. May we receive the courage to change the things that we can. What are some of those things you can change? Just take a moment, a second, write them down, think them, and receive the courage. But I think for me, the biggest one is the wisdom to know the difference. Because sometimes we are huku trying to change things that we really just need peace to accept. Okay? All right? And sometimes we are sitting back thinking we cannot change things, and yet we have the power to change them. And the only way we will be able to tell apart is by asking wisdom, okay, from God, because He knows all. He's the source of all wisdom. When it comes to rejected emptiness, we talked about these 3 areas, unacknowledged fears and unacknowledged fears. So there are fears, then there are those that are unacknowledged. And by speaking them out, there is power. Okay? So not just any other fear, but also ask God, shine your light and show me, are there things I do not know, so that I can bring them to the fore and deal with them. Rejected emptiness. What areas of emptiness do you as a parent need to acknowledge? Are you feeling empty in the different spaces of your life? Whether it's career, relationships, family. Because that emptiness, the people who really get the brunt of it are our children, because we try to sort that emptiness through them. If it's in space of career, we try to sort it. We don't want them to feel empty when they are our age. So we are filling them up with 100 million activities. Okay? There's such power in just stepping back and asking God, do I really need to sign up this child for this piano lesson? My friend, one of the parents in our class, really, when we were going through class and we were talking about trying to fill this up, he said, they used to go to church when he was young, and there was this family that was just the perfect. He struggled, like their family was not together. But there's this family that was really perfect. That's how it seemed. They would come and they would play the piano in church and sing together. And that was so admirable. And when we were talking about this, it came to a moment of realization that He has a very expensive piano in the house that is collecting dust, and he has tried everything to get his children. And he's like, this is where it's coming from. So what are those areas? Again, it's asking God, shine your light in those spaces that I may be pushing my child to fill up the emptiness that you need to show me, so I can work on it and fill it, so that my child doesn't have to live with my rejected emptiness. In what ways are these showing up in your parenting? Then forgotten lies, and this is the tricky one, because it's really about our childhood experiences and some of the trauma that comes up as a result of how we were brought up, and we haven't been able to process. It is very hard for us to go there, because we are like, but why go back? But I'm fine. But I turned out okay. And I tell parents, I'm not going to rush you in that process. I just want you to step back and find out, is there anything in your past that you think is affecting how you're raising your child? Okay? Because also, trauma has been shoved in our faces so much that now it's been made to be this really scary thing. And it shouldn't. Okay? It should just be about, again, asking God of all wisdom and God of light, the one who was there when you were 7 years old. He was there. Show me. Is there spaces that need healing? And help me walk that journey of healing. Okay? So we don't need intense therapy to be able to do that. We already have a wonderful counselor who is also full of wisdom, who is also light, and he can shine light in those broken spaces. And you can start that process today. And just say, walk this journey with me, hold my hand, and then he will bring people your way who can help you also in that journey. So that's another thing, because we do this in a community as champions, we are able to even have accountability partners to help us to process those things that we are uncovering. It's not easy. So what have you believed? What are you carrying from your childhood? What have you believed about yourself, about parenting, about relationships? The reason we are doing that is until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate, you will call it the enemy, you will call it the devil, you will call it an attack. And I'm not minimizing those things at all, okay? I'm just saying, let God shine light, bring to consciousness the things that are unconscious, so that we don't blame them on fate. Because if we blame them on fate, it puts us in a helpless position. And we have been given authority to trample over snakes, scorpions, overcome all the powers of the enemy. So we can't sit there and just call it fate. That is so defeatist. Okay? So I'm inviting you to get into those spaces. Again, I have a book that really helps you walk that journey of self-awareness. It's a 12-week session. It's a 12-week journey. Okay? Well, it's a 12-session journey. You can do it in 12 weeks. You can do it in 12 days. We have 12 sessions online that we use. And we usually do the book probably 60% of the time. Then the rest, we incorporate all these other things. But if you're not ready to do the class, you can still purchase the book. It's at 1,000 shillings. I forgot it in the car, but I will, like I said, I will run and get them so that anyone who would like to purchase, you can get it. But I always say this journey is better walked as a community, okay? We heal in relationships. Please remember that. It's in relationships that we get broken, and it's in relationships that we heal. Conscious connection. Please write any questions you have. I'm actually towards the tail end. First tool was? What was the first tool? Children of nowadays. And the second one? conscious self-awareness, heavy things. And all that, these things are to help you to become that one stable adult, okay? Conscious connection is a very practical way of how to begin to connect with your children. Why? Because, like I said, connection is the mother's milk of mental health. The main source of children's emotional well-being comes from connections, okay? It comes from deep attachment to those stable adults, to mothers, to fathers, to grandparents, and other caregivers in close relationships with them. If there is a gift you can give your children, it's the gift of connection. And we're just going to talk about very simple ways where we can look for small ways of connecting. Remember I said it's low-lying fruits, huh? So it's not about going to Naivasha, guys. No. It's about those 10 minutes. Actually, to be honest, research says 10 minutes is enough when you're fully present, when you're not distracted with other things. 10 minutes is enough to begin to build those correct connections. Why? Because those connections are happening in the brain. And I want you to see that. I mean, that's also another thing we do with kids. We help them see how this is working in their brain, and it makes it easier for them to be motivated and inspired to do those things. So in those exercises, we really talk about brain conversations. As much as possible, let it be something that has nothing to do with your persistent areas of struggle. Kuja to hang out, sale tunaosha vyombo. And you know that's the one that you fight the most over, okay? So again, what I tell parents is, out of the many activities, pick one, at least one. Tuseme out of 17 activities that you can do, that you will continue doing, pick one that is special with this one child, that they enjoy, even if you don't enjoy it, okay? Just the fact that you have gone out of your way to do it and connect with them, just pick it. Let them pick the activity, let them choose. Now, don't try and do 5 activities that you don't enjoy with this one child. You will burn out. That's why we need to start small. And when you become good in that one, it becomes easier to transfer because you've built that muscle. So the task I'm giving you here is to think about each of your children. Some of us have 1, some of us have 2, some of us have 6. More grace to you. Okay? Please find something you can do, even with your teenager who just doesn't look like they want to hang out with you. Ebu, come when you're at a good place and say, hey, there's something I learned today, and I want us to try. We underestimate. Because we are, especially with teenagers, because we are forever at loggerheads, we forget that there are little human beings deep in there who just want to connect. Okay, as much as we may look like, again, we are shambas, we don't know much and all that. And me, I love acting clueless with my son so that we just finish that business. Okay, so that now I also show him, hey, there are things I know as well. Okay, so look for small ways of connecting with each, or even the 3-year-old. Sit down and say, you know what? I want us to. Now, with the 3-year-old, the younger ones, schedule it in so that they expect. Even the older ones, you can schedule it in if they want, but with them, just one touch, and of course, with the older one, it could be more than 10 minutes. My point here is 10 minutes are okay, if that's all you have. If you can do more, that's fine, okay? So let it be daddy and Dennis time, or mommy and Emma time. You can even label it. For the younger ones, make a big deal out of it, make it fun, okay? And I'm just promising you, I'm telling you for sure, that when those 10 minutes are over, they will cry, okay? They will want you to continue. But there are many lessons you can teach there. You know, it's only 10 minutes. We agreed it's 10 minutes. So, mommy has to leave. Again, you're building boundaries. There's so many other lessons you can build. You can work into that. But if you agree 10 minutes, you do 10 minutes. If you agree 20, you do 20. Because also, it's possible that you're agreeing that with each and every child. So it's not just connection, but conscious connections. For some, let them teach you something. Okay? You know that thing you've been wondering, nini vitu mnafanyanga nini kwa computer? Now change that language. Ebu nionyeshe ni nini mnafanya. And they'll be like, I don't think it's for you. I'm like, imagine I want to learn. Okay? Let them teach you something. Even if you're totally against it. You know Roblox or what? Roblox, Minecraft, all those things. And for sure, like my son teaches me and he's like, Mom, I know you'll forget. I'm like, yeah. Then we go back again. It's not even so much about you remembering and taking notes and being proficient. It's the connection. Remember, it's happening at brain level. And I want us to remember that. The more you experience pushback with your children, I want you to know that's a sign that they need connection more. Most of the time we say it's attention-seeking behavior. I call it connection-seeking behavior. So the more we learn to connect with our children, the more they respond to us, even in the areas that we want them to do things. So my question is, what percentage of the time you're spending with your child do you spend fixing, ordering, correcting, directing? What percentage? We are really not doing well in the area of connection if it is 70% or more. Okay? We need to flip that and have 30%. We are entitled to fix, to correct, to direct, 30%. But let's spend 70% on connection. Sometimes it's just about you being there. Okay? I just want you to know that it doesn't have to be complicated. Even the things I'm telling you may not work for you. Find something else. But just make sure there's a moment of connection. So I have this practice of just going to my son's room when he's doing his homework and tell him, don't mind me. We endelea tu. Then I sit on his bed. Okay? Like just do what you're doing. Just that. Sometimes it's just touch. As they're doing something, working hard, and you think they're struggling, just touch and move on. Those are ways of connecting. And I think for me, the important thing is for you to understand what that is doing in the brain. That's why I'm building a case for conscious connections, especially with teenagers, but all children. Research shows that they engage in less risky behaviors when they feel close to their parents. And by being close, it's not forcing them to go out and to have, it's conscious connection. When you are consciously connecting with them, they engage in less risky behaviors, and I will just explain why. We also have research saying that real-life social connection calms the nervous system. Now, have we spent time talking about how our children's nervous system is revved up because of all this negativity coming at them? One tool is real-life connections. Conscious connections just count as that. It calms that part. So we need to go out of our way to create spaces for conscious connection. If we have predictable rituals, research says that it leads to children who are less sad, less anxious, and more in control. Sometimes when we hear this, we think now we have to do something every Friday, and then we do something else every this. No. Predictable rituals are as simple as when there is a birthday, which happens once a year, we bring a cake or we bake a cake and we sit together. And we try to do that for everyone. So like for us, we do it as siblings. When there is a birthday, we will, because for those who are here, we'll just get a cake. Na keki hata sio big deal. You get that one for 500, 1,000, whatever you can. But just make it a habit where the kids know that when there's a birthday, we cut a cake. Make a habit where the kids know. I don't know what rituals you can have, but the idea is let it be predictable. When it's predictable, they are less anxious. They are less sad. They are more in control. So with everything I'm telling you, I would like you to just ask yourself, what can I do? Like I'm giving you a lot of tools. Consume them. But pick one thing that you can pick and run with it. This is when I talked about touch. Touch releases oxytocin, the bonding chemical. Okay? So even just rubbing them, hugging them, touch is very important. Something is happening in the brain. So let's get into the habit of touching. And not touching, again, when you're tense. And no. Be relaxed, touch. Don't say much, hug. Let's do a lot more of touching. Low-lying fruits, people. Low-lying fruits. These are things you don't need to spend money on. Now, I talked about teenagers engaging in less risky behaviors when they feel close to their parents. Why? Because in the brain, there are some circuits that happen when you're bonding. There are some pathways that are created when you are bonding or you're having conscious connections with your children. Now, if you don't create those bonds, nature abhors a vacuum. Something else will take over. The same pathways that lead to bonding are the same pathways that lead to addiction. Okay? I don't even think I need to make a bigger case for conscious connection than that. That if we don't spend time in conscious connection with our children in simple ways, again, no pressure, people. Let's start small. If we don't spend time in that, those pathways are going to be taken up by other ways of connection. And that is addiction. And nowadays, we don't even worry so much about drug addiction, although it's a lot. It's not that we are minimizing it. But the first addiction that happens very quickly is technology, social media. They get sucked. And so that's where they're getting their connections. Okay? So are you seeing the way I was saying there's a system that has already been created? We have to create our own matrix, okay? We have to do our own matrix and make sure that we are consistent and become the stable adults in that matrix. Because no matter how far gone your child has, how far you think your relationship is toxic, you can begin. You remember, you see this, if there's a lot of acid here, if you want to neutralize it, just keep putting base, drop by drop, and it will get neutralized. Okay? And with God helping us, we can do this. We give up easily. We also have our own issues. We also have our own struggles. And so let's come together and see how we can change the narrative. So the question is, what is the one thing you can do to do today to consciously connect with each child? Then finally, a conscious community. Do you know we could be in a community like this, but we are not connecting consciously?